Da-ho Kim was drinking his morning coffee when the sky changed color. The sun was shining bright over Seoul just a moment ago, but now everything looked dark and strange. He put down his coffee cup and walked to the big window in his office on the 20th floor of the Samsung building. Something huge was blocking out the sun at. First, he thought it might be a very big cloud, but clouds do not have straight lines and metal edges. This thing in the sky was massive, bigger than any building he had ever seen. It was so big that it covered half the city. The metal surface was dark gray, and it had strange lights blinking all over it like a Christmas tree, but much more scary. Dae-ho rubbed his eyes, thinking maybe he was still dreaming, had worked late last night fixing computer problems for his company, and maybe his brain was playing tricks on him. But when he opened his eyes, the giant thing was still there, floating in the air, like it weighed nothing at all. Other people in the office were starting to notice too. His co-worker, Min-ho Park, ran over to the window with his mouth wide open. Min-ho said, "What are you looking at?" Dae-ho, and then he saw it too, and his coffee cup fell right out of his hands and broke on the floor, making a loud crash sound. The whole office became very quiet, except for the sound of people breathing hard and someone crying softly in the corner. Everyone was staring up at the sky through the big windows. The giant metal thing was not moving. It was just sitting there in the air like a mountain that had decided to fly. Dae-ho worked as a computer engineer and he was good at solving problems, but he had never seen a problem like this before. He tried to think of what could make something so big float in the air. Maybe it was some kind of new airplane from America or Russia, but it was too big for that. Even the biggest airplane he had ever heard of was tiny compared to this thing. The metal object had to be at least 2 kilometers long and maybe 1 kilometer wide. It was shaped like a triangle, but with rounded edges, and it had towers sticking out of the top that looked like radio antennas or maybe weapons. He could not tell which. More shapes started appearing in the sky, smaller than the first one, but still huge. These new objects were coming down from space, and they were heading toward different parts of the city. Dae-ho counted at least 20 of them, and more kept coming. The smaller ships, if that is what they were, looked different from the big one. They were round like circles, and they had bright lights underneath that made buzzing sounds, even from far away. The lights were not white or yellow, like normal lights. They were purple and blue, and they hurt to look at. People in the office started talking all at once, some in Korean and some in English, because there were workers from different countries. Everyone was asking the same questions. What is that thing? Where did it come from? What does it want? Dae-ho pulled out his phone to call his wife Yoon-ju, who worked at a school across the city, but the phone was not working. The screen showed no signal, which was very strange because Seoul had the best phone networks in the world. He tried calling again, but nothing happened. Min-ho tried his phone too, but it was also not working. Then someone shouted, "Look at the TV," and everyone turned to watch the big television screen on the wall. The TV was showing news from around the world, and the same giant metal objects were appearing over every major city. The news reporter in New York looked very scared as she pointed to massive ships hanging over Manhattan. London had them too, and so did Tokyo and Paris and Moscow. The reporter said that governments around the world were trying to contact the objects, but getting no response. Dae-ho felt his stomach drop like he was on a fast elevator. These were not human machines. They were something else, something from somewhere else. The shapes were too strange, and the technology was too advanced. No country on Earth could make things that big float in the air so easily. The news switched to show the president of South Korea standing behind his desk looking very serious. President Han Sol-lee was a strong man who had led the country through many difficult times, but even he looked worried as he spoke to the cameras. President Lee said that the government was working to understand what these objects wanted. He said that people should stay calm and stay in their homes or offices until more information was available. He said the military was watching the situation carefully, but Dae-ho could tell from the president's voice that even he did not know what to do. Outside the window, more of the round. Ships were landing in different parts of Seoul. They were coming down slowly, like giant elevators, and when they touched the ground, they made no sound at all, which was very strange, because something that big should make a huge noise when it lands. Biggest ship was still floating above the city center, right over the government buildings. Dae-ho wondered if that was on purpose. Maybe whoever was inside those ships knew exactly where the important buildings were. Maybe they had been watching Earth for a long time. Some of the office workers started crying, and others were calling their families even though the phones were not working. A few people decided to leave and go home, but Dae-ho stayed at the window watching. He was scared, but also curious about what would happen next. The round ships that had landed were opening up like flowers with metal petals. Things were coming out of them, but they were too far away for Dae-ho to see clearly. He wished he had binoculars, but all he could do was squint and try to make out the shapes. Whatever was coming out of the ships was moving in organized groups like soldiers. They seemed to be setting up some kind of equipment or maybe weapons around their ships. The movements looked purposeful, like they had done this many times before on other worlds. That thought made Dae-ho feel cold all over other worlds. These visitors were not from Earth, which meant they had traveled through space to get here. They had technology that could cross the vast emptiness between stars, and now they were on his planet in his city right outside his office window. The reality of the situation started to sink in. This was not a movie or a video game. This was real life, and aliens had come to Earth. They had giant ships and advanced technology, and they were setting up some kind of operation in Seoul and every other major city around the world. Dae-ho thought about his wife, Yoon-ju, and wondered if she was safe at her school. He thought about his parents who lived in Busan and hoped the aliens had not gone there too. He thought about all the people in the world who were probably looking up at the sky right now, feeling the same fear and confusion that he felt. The morning had started like any other day with coffee and computer work and plans for lunch, but now everything was different. The world had changed in just a few minutes, and Dae-ho Kim knew that nothing would ever be the same again. He continued watching through the window. As more ships arrived and the sky grew darker with their metal shadows, not knowing that this was only the beginning of the strangest and most dangerous day in human history. 3 hours after the giant ships appeared over Seoul, every television screen on Earth suddenly turned on by itself. Dae-ho Kim was still standing by his office window when the screens began glowing, even though no one had touched the remote control. The normal TV programs disappeared, and something new appeared instead. The image showed a creature that looked almost human, but not quite right. It had 2 eyes like humans, but they were much larger and completely black, with no white parts at all. The skin was pale gray and seemed to shine under bright lights. The creature wore some kind of dark uniform with symbols that looked like nothing Dae-ho had ever seen before. When the creature spoke, its voice came through every speaker in the world. At the same time, every radio, every television, every phone that still worked, and even the speakers in cars and computers, the voice was deep and cold like winter wind. "I am Commander Vex of the Korath Empire," the creature said. And somehow, everyone could understand the words. Even though it was not speaking Korean or English or any human language, the words just appeared in people's minds like magic. "Your planet has been selected for acquisition by our empire," the commander continued. "You have one of your Earth hours to surrender completely. If you do not surrender, we will take your world by force. Your military cannot stop us. Your weapons cannot hurt us. Your only choice is to submit and serve." The message played 3 times, and then the screens went back to showing regular programs, but everyone had heard it. Everyone knew what it meant. The aliens wanted to own Earth, like it was a piece of property they could just take. President Han Sol-lee was in his emergency bunker deep under the Blue House in Seoul, surrounded by his advisors and military generals. Everyone was talking at once, trying to figure out what to do. General Kim Tae-sung wanted to attack the ships immediately, while Minister Park So-young suggested trying to negotiate. President Lee held up his hand for silence. He was 60 years old and had been through many crises in his career, but nothing like this. Still, he was the leader of his country, and his people were counting on him to make the right decision. "We do not surrender," he said firmly. "We have never surrendered to anyone, and we will not start now. Send a message back to this Commander Vex. Tell him that Earth belongs to humans, and humans do not give up their home." But Mr. President, General Kim said, "How can we fight them? Look at the size of their ships. Our missiles might not even scratch them. Then we will find another way." President Lee replied, "If our missiles do not work, we will use something else. Humans are good at finding solutions to impossible problems." The president's message was broadcast around the world within minutes. Other world leaders quickly agreed. The President of the United States, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, the leaders of China, Russia, India, Brazil, and dozens of other countries all said the same thing. No surrender. Commander Vex received the human response while standing on the bridge of his massive flagship. He had conquered 47 planets for the Korath Empire, and never before had a species refused his offer. Every other race had begged for mercy or tried to make deals, but these humans simply said no. This surprised him. Most intelligent species understood when they were beaten. The humans could see his ships. They could see his technology. They had to know they could not win, yet they refused to surrender anyway. "Perhaps they need a demonstration of our power," Vex told his crew. "Destroy their military installations. Show them what happens to those who defy the Korath Empire." The alien ships began to move. Bright beams of energy shot down from the hovering vessels, striking military bases around the world. Air Force bases, Navy yards, Army installations, all targeted with precision. The beams were so hot they turned metal into vapor and concrete into glass in Seoul. The alien beam hit Yongsan military base, and the entire complex simply disappeared, leaving only a smoking crater where thousands of soldiers had been working just moments before similar attacks happened everywhere. Missiles, silos, radar stations, weapons factories, all destroyed in minutes. The world watched in horror as their military might was swept away like dust. But instead of surrendering, something unexpected happened. People got angry. In Tokyo, a group of university students led by Kenji Tanaka gathered in the streets with homemade signs demanding the aliens leave. In London, factory workers walked out of their jobs and started making weapons from scrap metal. In New York, taxi driver Miguel Santos organized his fellow drivers to block roads leading to the alien landing sites. The anger spread like wildfire across every continent. Farmers in Australia grabbed hunting rifles. Fishermen in Norway sailed their boats toward the alien ships. Students in Egypt threw rocks at the strange floating machines. Even children too young to understand war picked up sticks and stones. Commander Vex watched the human response through his viewing screens and felt confusion. These creatures were supposed to be terrified. They were supposed to beg for their lives. Instead, they were fighting back with primitive weapons against technology that could destroy planets on the streets of Seoul. Dae-ho Kim had left his office and joined thousands of other people, marching toward the nearest alien landing site. They carried whatever they could find: kitchen knives, baseball bats, garden tools, anything that could be used as a weapon. Walking beside him was an old woman named Grandmother Choi, who had lived through the Korean War. She carried a wooden walking stick, and her eyes were bright with determination. "These aliens think we are weak," she told Dae-ho, "but they do not know Koreans. We have been invaded before by people who thought they were stronger than us. We survived then, and we will survive now." The crowd reached the alien landing site, where one of the round ships sat in the middle of what used to be a parking lot. Strange creatures in armor were setting up equipment around their ship. They looked similar to Commander Vex, but smaller. and they carried weapons that glowed with the same energy that had destroyed the military bases. The aliens noticed the human crowd approaching and raised their weapons, expecting the humans to run away. Instead, the crowd kept coming. Someone threw a rock that bounced harmlessly off an alien's armor, but more rocks followed, then bottles and pieces of metal. The aliens fired warning shots into the air with beams that lit up the sky like lightning. But the humans did not stop. They kept throwing things and shouting and moving closer. The aliens had never seen anything like this before. Every species they conquered had either fled in terror or surrendered immediately. Similar scenes were happening all over Earth. In every city where alien ships had landed, humans were gathering to fight back. They had no real weapons and no plan, but they refused to give up their planet without a struggle. Commander Vex realized he had made a mistake. These humans were not like other species he had conquered. They did not think logically about odds of survival. They fought based on emotion and pride and something else he could not understand. Perhaps we should have studied them more carefully, he thought as he watched the reports from his soldiers around the globe. These creatures are not behaving as predicted. What he did not yet know was that humans had spent their entire history fighting against impossible odds. They had survived ice ages and plagues and wars, and natural disasters. They had learned that sometimes the only way to win was to refuse to lose. The first day of the invasion was ending, and while the aliens had superior technology, the humans had something the Korath Empire had never encountered. Before they had the stubborn determination of a species that had clawed its way to the top of their planet's food chain by never giving up, Commander Vex stared down at the blue and green world below and wondered if perhaps his empire had chosen the wrong planet to conquer. Sora Park was not like most police officers in Seoul. She had studied physics at university before joining the police force, and she always noticed things that other people missed, while other officers were trying to organize crowd control around the alien landing sites. Sora was watching the aliens themselves very carefully. She stood behind a concrete barrier about 200 meters from one of the round alien ships with her binoculars focused on the strange creatures in their shiny armor. The aliens moved in perfect formation like robots, but there was something odd about their behavior. Every few minutes, the aliens would stop what they were doing and shake their heads like they had headaches. Their glowing weapons would flicker, and sometimes turn off completely for a few seconds. Then the aliens would hit the weapons with their hands, and the glow would come back. Sora had noticed this pattern starting about an hour ago, and it was getting worse. The aliens seemed to be having more and more problems with their equipment. She wondered what could be causing it. She looked around the area where the alien ship had landed. It was in the middle of Uedo, which was full of office buildings and apartment towers. There were power lines everywhere, carrying electricity to thousands of homes and businesses. There were cell phone towers on top of many buildings, sending radio signals across the city. There were subway lines underground with electric trains running through. Then Sora pulled out her phone and called her friend Dr. Young-hee Ko, who worked at Seoul National University. Young-hee was one of the smartest people Sora knew, and she specialized in studying electromagnetic fields. Young-hee, the aliens are having equipment problems, Sora said when her friend answered. Can you meet me at the Uedo landing site? I think their technology does not work well around our power systems. Young-hee arrived 30 minutes later, carrying a bag full of scientific instruments. She was a small woman with thick glasses, but her mind was sharp like a knife. She immediately began taking measurements with her devices. Look at these readings, Young-hee said excitedly. The electromagnetic field around the alien ship is completely chaotic. Our power lines and radio towers and Wi-Fi signals are creating interference. The aliens' technology seems to be very sensitive to electromagnetic noise. Sora watched through her binoculars as more aliens came out of their ship to work on the equipment outside, But as soon as they got close to the buildings with their power systems, the aliens' equipment started malfunctioning again. Their weapons stopped glowing. Their armor became dim and their communication devices made crackling sounds. "This is it," Sora said. "This is how we fight them. We use our own technology against theirs." While Sora and Young Hee were making their discovery in Seoul, a farmer named Taemin Choi was making a similar discovery in the countryside outside. Busan and Alien Patrol had landed in his rice fields, and soldiers were setting up some kind of base near his farmhouse. Taemin was 65 years old and had been farming the same land for 40 years. He knew every inch of his property, and he was not happy about uninvited guests. He watched the aliens from his kitchen window as they worked. The alien soldiers were having trouble with their equipment, just like the ones in Seoul, but Taemin did not know about electromagnetic fields. He just knew that every time the aliens walked past his old tractor, their weapons would spark and make strange noises. Taemin had bought that tractor 15 years ago, and it had a big diesel engine with an electric starter and alternator. The engine was not running, but the battery was still connected, and it was putting out a small electromagnetic field. Being a practical man, Taemin decided to test his theory. He started up the tractor and drove it slowly toward the alien camp. The aliens noticed him coming and raised their weapons to warn him away, but as he got closer, their weapons stopped working completely. The aliens began talking rapidly in their strange language and pointing at the tractor. Some of them tried to retreat, but others stood their ground and attempted to fix their weapons. Taemin drove in a circle around them, keeping about 50 meters away, and their equipment kept failing. Taemin smiled for the first time since the invasion began. He had found their weakness. Drove back to his farmhouse and called his neighbor Jong-soo Lee, who had a farm on the other side of the hill. Jong-soo had 3 tractors and a big electric grain dryer that put out even more electromagnetic interference. Jong-soo Taemin said, "You need to start up all your machines and drive them toward the alien camp. Trust me." Within an hour, a convoy of farm vehicles was moving across the countryside toward the alien landing site. Tractors combines harvesters and trucks with diesel generators, all creating electromagnetic fields. The alien soldiers tried to retreat to their ship, but their equipment was failing so badly they could barely coordinate their movements. The farmers did not attack the aliens directly. They just drove around them, in circles, keeping their engines running and their electrical systems operating. The aliens were effectively trapped because their weapons and communication gear would not work properly. News of the farmers' success spread quickly through social media and emergency radio broadcasts. Sora Park was already working with Dr. Young-hee Ko to organize a coordinated response in Seoul. They contacted electrical workers and asked them to increase power output from the city grid. Every building in the affected areas began using more electricity. Businesses turned on all their lights and computers. Families ran their microwaves and hair dryers and vacuum cleaners all at the same time. The electromagnetic interference became so strong that alien equipment stopped working entirely within a 3-kilometer radius of their landing sites. Commander Vex received reports from his soldiers around the world and could not believe what he was hearing. His advanced technology was being defeated by primitive human electrical devices. The humans had somehow figured out his people's weakness in less than 24 hours. How did they discover this so quickly? He asked his science officer. Other species took years to understand our technology, but these humans identified our vulnerability almost immediately. The science officer consulted his computer displays. "Sir, these humans seem to have electromagnetic devices everywhere in their cities. Their entire civilization runs on electrical power. They are surrounded by the exact type of interference that affects our equipment." Vex realized that his intelligence reports about Earth had been completely wrong. His scouts had observed human technology from space and decided it was primitive. But they had not understood that the humans had covered their entire planet with electromagnetic fields. Human cities were like giant interference generators. On Earth, The discovery was spreading faster than the aliens could adapt. Every major city began implementing the same strategy. Electrical companies increased power output, radio stations boosted their transmission strength, cell phone towers operated at maximum capacity. In Tokyo, the government asked every citizen to turn on every electrical device they owned. In London, electrical workers began installing temporary power lines near alien landing sites. In New York, utility companies started running their generators at full capacity, even in areas that did not need extra power. The aliens found themselves trapped in their ships, unable to use their weapons effectively whenever they ventured into human cities. Their technology, which had conquered dozens of planets, was useless against the electromagnetic soup that humans lived in. Every day, Commander Vex stared at his situation reports and felt something he had never experienced before. Doubt his empire had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years by using superior technology to crush primitive civilizations. But these humans had turned their own primitive technology into a weapon against him. He had expected to conquer Earth in a few days with minimal resistance. Instead, he was facing an enemy that adapted faster than any species he had ever encountered. They had found his weakness, studied it, and turned it against him in less than one day. For the first time since the invasion began, Commander Vex wondered if the Korath Empire had made a serious mistake in choosing Earth as their next conquest. These humans were proving to be far more dangerous than anyone had predicted. Jin-Woo Lee had owned his auto repair shop in Gangnam for 20 years and had never imagined he would become a weapons manufacturer, but that was exactly what happened on the second day of the alien invasion. When word spread about the electromagnetic weakness of the alien technology, Jin-Woo saw an opportunity. He gathered all his employees in the main garage and spread out the plan he had been working on all night. His idea was simple but clever. Take car parts that generated electromagnetic fields and turn them into portable weapons against the aliens. Look, Jin-Woo told his workers, we have alternators from cars that create electrical fields when they spin. We have car batteries that store power. We have copper wire and electric motors. And all kinds of electrical components. If we put these together the right way, we can make devices that will stop alien weapons from working. His head mechanic sang ho. Kim was skeptical. How do we know this will work? Jin-Woo. We are not scientists. We just fix cars. Jin-Woo pointed to a news report on the television showing farmers driving tractors around confused alien soldiers. It worked for the farmers, and tractors are just big engines with electrical systems. We can make smaller versions that people can carry. The team got to work immediately. They took alternators from old cars and connected them to small gasoline engines from lawn mowers. This created a portable generator that put out a strong electromagnetic field. They mounted the whole device on wheels so people could push it around like a shopping cart. But Jin-Woo was not satisfied with just one design. He wanted to make weapons that individuals could use. His next creation used a car battery connected to an electric motor from a power window. The motor spun a metal disc very fast, creating electromagnetic interference. The whole thing fit into a backpack by afternoon. Jin-Woo had created 5 different designs. Some were big and powerful for groups to use. Others were small enough for one person to carry. All of them created electromagnetic fields that made alien weapons malfunction. Word about Jin-Woo's workshop spread through Seoul, and people began arriving to help or to get copies of his designs. A high school student named Min Jung Park brought her electronics class to help build circuit boards. A retired electrician named Dong Ho Yoon showed up with boxes of spare parts from his basement. The workshop became a 24-hour operation with people working. In shifts, everyone brought whatever they could find. Car batteries from junkyard power tools from construction sites, electric motors from broken appliances, even old microwave ovens were taken apart to use their electromagnetic components, Jin-Woo's. most successful design was something he called the Disruption Backpack. It used a motorcycle battery to power 3 electric motors spinning at different speeds. This created overlapping electromagnetic fields that completely scrambled alien equipment. Within a 50-meter radius, the backpack design was copied and improved by workshops in every major city. Electrical engineers made versions that were more powerful. Soldiers made versions that were more portable. Teachers made versions that were safer for children to use. In Busan, shipyard worker Hye Jin Choi organized her co-workers to build giant electromagnetic generators using ship engines and industrial electrical equipment. They created devices so powerful they could disable alien vehicles from over a kilometer away. The shipyard became like a fortress surrounded by electromagnetic weapons. Meanwhile, in the countryside, farmer Tae-min Choi was discovering new ways to use everyday farm equipment against the aliens he found. That his electric fence controller could be modified to create pulses of electromagnetic energy that confused alien communication systems. Tae-min worked with his neighbors to set up a network of modified electric fences around all the alien landing sites in their area. The aliens found themselves trapped in electromagnetic cages, unable to coordinate their movements or call for help from their ships. The speed of human adaptation amazed everyone, including the humans themselves. In just 2 days, ordinary people with no military training had become inventors and engineers. They were taking apart household appliances and rebuilding them into weapons. Dr. Young-hee Ko from Seoul National University was coordinating with workshops around the world to share designs and improvements. Her laboratory became a center for testing new ideas and making them more effective. Every few hours, someone would bring in a new device or a better way to build an existing one. Young-hee was particularly impressed by the creativity she was seeing. A dentist in Daegu had modified his X-ray machine to create focused electromagnetic beams. A music teacher in Incheon had turned her electric piano into a device that generated electromagnetic pulses, in rhythm with music. Even children were contributing to the effort. Elementary school students collected old batteries and electronic toys for the workshops. High school students used their knowledge of science and engineering to improve existing designs. College students organized volunteer groups to carry the backpack disruptors to wherever they were needed. The aliens were completely unprepared for this kind of response. In all their previous conquests, they had faced military resistance, or desperate civilian attempts to hide the Korath Empire was used to fighting against conventional weapons and standard military tactics. But the humans were not fighting a conventional war. They were fighting an engineering war. Every human seemed to become an inventor working to create new ways to exploit the alien vulnerability. The speed of innovation was faster than anything the aliens had ever encountered. Commander Vex received hourly reports from his ground teams, and each report was worse than the last. His soldiers could not leave their ships without having their equipment fail. Their communication networks were being jammed by devices built from human household appliances. Their weapons were useless against enemies carrying electromagnetic generators made from car parts. The humans were not just adapting, they were innovating. In 3 days, they had gone from throwing rocks to building sophisticated electronic warfare devices. They were turning their entire civilization into a weapon against his technology. Private Keth was one of the alien soldiers trapped in a ship that had landed in downtown Seoul. He watched through the viewing port as humans outside his ship worked on their strange devices. They moved with purpose and determination, building and testing and improving their creations with each passing hour. Keth had been a soldier for 10 years and had participated in the conquest of 7 different worlds, but he had never seen anything like this. Other species either fought bravely and died or surrendered quickly and survived. These humans were doing something completely different. They were learning. Every time the aliens tried a new tactic, the humans figured out a counter strategy within hours. When the aliens switched to different communication frequencies, the humans built devices to jam those frequencies too. When the aliens tried to move at night, the humans used car headlights and searchlights to create even stronger electromagnetic fields in the darkness. The human workshops never stopped working. They operated around the clock with people taking shifts to keep production going. The designs kept getting better, more efficient, more powerful, easier to build and use. Jin Woo Lee looked at his workshop, which had grown from 5 employees to over 200 volunteers working on dozens of different projects. His simple auto repair shop had become the center of a technological revolution that was spreading across the entire planet. He picked up one of the latest electromagnetic disruptors, a device no bigger than a laptop computer, but powerful enough to disable alien equipment from 200 meters away. It had taken humanity thousands of years to develop the technology that made this device possible, but only 3 days to weaponize it against an alien invasion. The humans were proving that sometimes the most advanced technology could be defeated by the most creative application of simpler technology. They were showing that intelligence and determination could overcome superior firepower if applied correctly and quickly. As Jin Woo watched volunteers loading electromagnetic weapons onto trucks to distribute around the city, he realized that the aliens had made a fundamental mistake. They had underestimated not just human technology, but human adaptability. The Korath Empire was about to learn that conquering a species was very different from conquering a civilization, and humanity was a civilization that never stopped learning, never stopped building, and never stopped fighting. Teacher Hai Jin Yoon had spent 15 years teaching middle school students in Seoul, and she thought she knew everything about organizing chaos. But leading a civilian resistance against alien invaders was much harder than managing a classroom. Full of teenagers on the 3rd day of the invasion, Hae-jin found herself in command of 200 people who had gathered around Dongdaemun Elementary School. The school had become a coordination center for the neighborhood resistance because it had backup generators and a kitchen that could feed large groups. Hae-jin stood in the school cafeteria looking at maps of the local area that were spread across the lunch tables. Around her were people she had never met before, but who now looked to her for leadership. There was Kyung-soo Park, who managed the subway station, Min-ae Cho, who ran a restaurant nearby, and dozens of others who had left their normal lives to fight for their planet. The nearest alien ship was only 8 blocks away. And the electromagnetic weapons from Jin Woo Lee's workshop were working well at disabling alien equipment. But Hae-jin knew they needed to do more than just defend. They needed to take the offensive and drive the aliens back. She had been thinking about military strategy all night, using lessons she remembered from history class. The aliens were powerful, but they were also trapped in their ships by the electromagnetic fields that surrounded them. They were like insects caught in a web, unable to move freely. We need to make the web tighter, Hae-jin told her group. Every building between here and the alien ship needs to have maximum electrical activity. We need to create a corridor of electromagnetic interference so strong that the aliens cannot even approach us. The plan required coordination between hundreds of people in dozens of buildings. Hae-jin divided her volunteers into teams and gave each team responsibility for one city block. They would go building by building asking residents to turn on every electrical device they owned, but some buildings were empty because people had evacuated when the aliens arrived. So the teams needed to break into those buildings and turn on the electrical systems manually. This meant sending people into dangerous areas where alien patrols might be operating. Hae-jin decided to lead the first team herself. She took 12 volunteers, including Kyung-soo from the subway station and Min-ae from the restaurant. They carried electromagnetic backpack, weapons, and moved carefully down the street toward the alien ship. The first building was a 20-story office tower that had been abandoned when the invasion started. Hae-jin and her team broke in through a side entrance and began working their way up floor by floor, turning on lights, computers, printers, and anything else that used electricity. On the 8th floor, they could see the alien ship through the windows. It was a dark, metallic dome sitting in the middle of what used to be a public. Park alien soldiers were visible around the ship, but they stayed close to their landing craft because the electromagnetic interference from the surrounding buildings was already affecting their equipment. Minnie pointed to something moving near. The ship. "Look," she whispered. "There are more of them coming out." A new group of alien soldiers was emerging from the ship, but these ones were different. They wore heavier armor and carried larger weapons that seemed less affected by the electromagnetic. Field's He-Jin realized that the aliens were adapting too, bringing out equipment specifically designed to work in high-interference environments. "We need to increase the power," He-Jin said quickly. "Get to the electrical panels and override the safety limits. We need more electromagnetic output than these buildings were designed for." The team split up to work on different floors. Kyung-soo used his knowledge of electrical systems to boost power throughout the building. He bypassed circuit breakers and connected additional loads to increase the electromagnetic signature. The building began using 3 times more electricity than normal. Similar scenes were happening all over Seoul, and in cities around the world, human teams were turning their urban environments into electromagnetic warfare zones. Every building became a weapon. Every power line became part of a vast interference network. The effect on the aliens was immediate and dramatic. Their new heavy equipment began malfunctioning. As soon as they moved away from their ship, the soldiers stumbled and fell as their armor systems failed. Their weapons sparked and went dark, but the aliens were not giving up easily. Commander Vex had ordered all ships to launch a coordinated attack, using their most powerful weapons. The plan was to destroy the human electrical infrastructure and eliminate the source of electromagnetic interference. From orbit, the large alien ships began charging their main weapons. These were planet-cracking devices designed to destroy military installations and power plants. The energy buildup was visible from Earth as bright lights gathering around the ships. He-Jin watched from her office building as the alien weapons prepared to fire. She knew that once the power plants were destroyed, the electromagnetic defense would collapse and humanity would be defenseless against the invasion. But the humans had one more surprise. Dr. Young-hee Ko had been working with electrical engineers around the world on a secret project. They had realized that if electromagnetic interference could disable alien equipment, then a massive coordinated electromagnetic pulse might disable the alien ships themselves. The plan required every power plant, every radio station, every electrical system on Earth to discharge energy simultaneously, creating an electromagnetic pulse so powerful it would reach into orbit. The technical challenges were enormous, and the timing had to be perfect. Young-hee had convinced governments and electrical companies to participate in what she called Operation Blackout. At exactly noon, Seoul time, every electrical system on the planet would overload on purpose, creating the largest artificial electromagnetic pulse in human history. The countdown began with 10 minutes to go. He-Jin and her volunteers watched from their building as people all over the city prepared for the pulse. Emergency services had backup power systems that would restart immediately after the pulse. But the alien ships had no such protection. 5 minutes to go, and the alien weapons were almost fully charged. Bright energy was building around their ships like artificial stars. The humans had only one chance to make this work. He-Jin looked at her watch. 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute. At exactly noon, the entire planet went dark. Every power plant, every generator, every electrical device on Earth discharged its energy at the same moment. The electromagnetic pulse was so powerful it was visible from space as a blue-white flash that surrounded the entire planet. The effect on the alien ships was immediate. They went dark and began falling from orbit like stones. Some ships tried to restart their engines, but the electromagnetic pulse had damaged their control systems beyond repair. The massive command ship that had been hovering over Seoul crashed into the mountains outside the city with an explosion that could be seen from 50 kilometers away. Smaller ships fell into oceans and forests and empty fields around the world. A few managed controlled landings, but most were completely disabled by the electromagnetic attack. The invasion fleet that had seemed invincible just hours before was now scattered wreckage on. The ground alien soldiers found themselves completely cut off from their command structure. Their equipment was dead, their ships were gone, and they were surrounded by humans who had electromagnetic weapons and no intention of showing mercy, but not all the aliens continued fighting. Private Keth had been watching the humans for 3 days, and he was amazed by what he saw. They fought not just with weapons, but with intelligence and creativity. They adapted faster than any species he had ever encountered. When his ship crashed outside Seoul, Keth removed his armor and walked away from the wreckage. He was tired of being a conqueror. He wanted to understand these remarkable creatures who had defeated the most powerful empire in the galaxy using nothing but their ingenuity and determination. Hai-Jin watched from her office building as the electromagnetic pulse faded and the city power systems came back online. Around the world, humans were cheering as they realized they had won. The alien invasion was over. But the real victory was not just military. The humans had proven something important about themselves. They had shown that they could unite in the face of impossible odds, that they could adapt to any challenge, and that they would never surrender their freedom. As the sun set over Seoul on the 3rd day of the invasion, Hai-Jin looked out at her city and smiled. The aliens had come to conquer Earth, but instead, they had discovered why humans were not meant to be conquered. The species that had survived ice ages and plagues and wars and natural disasters had survived their first alien invasion too. And they had done it by being exactly what they had always been: creative, stubborn, and absolutely unwilling to give up. Private Keth walked through the streets of Seoul with his hands raised above his head, showing that he carried no weapons. He had removed his Korath Empire armor and wore only the simple gray clothing that all soldiers wore under their battle gear. He looked almost human except for his pale skin and completely black eyes. The humans he encountered were suspicious, but not hostile. They had won their war and could afford to be curious about their former enemy. Children followed him at a safe distance, pointing and whispering, while adults watched from windows and doorways. Keth was looking for someone in authority to surrender to. But the human command structure was unlike anything he had seen before. There seemed to be no central military leadership. Instead, ordinary citizens like teachers and farmers and mechanics had organized the resistance. He eventually found his way to Dongdaemun Elementary School, where teacher Hai-Jin Yoon was coordinating recovery efforts in her neighborhood. Hai-Jin was in the school courtyard helping distribute food to families whose homes had been damaged when she saw the alien approaching. The crowd of humans around her tensed, and some reached for electromagnetic weapons, but Hai-Jin held up her hand for calm. She had taught hundreds of students over the years, and she had developed an instinct for reading body language. This alien was not a threat. "You are surrendering," she asked Keth in simple English, hoping he would understand. "I am seeking." To understand, Keth replied in Korean that was heavily accented but clear. "I watched your people fight, and I need to know how you defeated us." Hai-Jin studied the alien soldier. He was young by human standards, maybe equivalent to a 20-year-old. Human. His black eyes showed intelligence and something else that surprised her curiosity rather than hostility. "Why do you want to understand?" she asked. "Because my people have conquered 47 worlds and never encountered anything like humans," Keth said. "We thought we understood warfare. We thought superior technology always defeated inferior technology. But you proved us wrong." Other humans had gathered around to listen to this conversation. Many of them were holding electromagnetic disruptors, but they kept the weapons lowered. Hai-Jin gestured for everyone to give them space and led Keth to a quiet corner of the courtyard. "Tell me about your people," Hai-Jin said. What made you think you could just take our world? Keth sat down on a bench and looked up at the blue sky, which was so different from the red sky of his home planet. The Korath Empire has existed for 3,000 years, he said. We have the most advanced technology in the galaxy. Our ships can travel between stars. Our weapons can destroy planets. Our armies are unstoppable, but you were stopped, Heijin pointed out. You were stopped by people who had never fought aliens before. You were stopped by farmers and teachers and mechanics. That is what I do not understand, Keth said. Every other species we conquered either fought with traditional military forces that we could easily defeat, or they tried to hide until we found them. But you did something completely different. Heijin thought about the past few days and tried to explain what had happened from the human perspective. We did not fight you the way we fight other humans, she said. We fought you like we fight any problem that threatens us. We studied you. We learned about you and we found a solution. This confused Keth even more. On my world, when we face a problem, we use our existing technology to solve it. If that does not work, we find a bigger weapon or a stronger defense. But humans seem to invent completely new approaches because we have to Heijin said humans have always lived on a dangerous planet. We have earthquakes and hurricanes and diseases and droughts. We have predators and natural disasters and environmental changes. We learned long ago that survival means adaptation. She pointed to the school building around them. This school has survived 3 wars, 2 earthquakes, a flood, and countless other disasters. Each time we rebuilt it, we made it stronger and better. Humans do not just survive problems. We learn from them. Keth was beginning to understand something important about human nature. The Korath Empire conquered planets by overwhelming them with superior force. But humans had evolved on a planet that constantly challenged them. They had developed the ability to turn any challenge into an opportunity to grow stronger. What will you do now? Keth asked. Will you build weapons to attack my empire? Will you seek revenge for the damage we caused? Jin shook her head. We will rebuild our cities and repair the damage. But we will also study your technology to understand how it works. We will learn from this experience and become stronger. This was exactly what Keth had feared and admired about humans. They did not just defeat their enemies, they learned from them. Every challenge made them more capable. The invasion had not weakened humanity. It had taught them about interstellar technology and shown them that they could defend against alien attacks. Around the world, similar conversations were taking place between humans and the surviving alien soldiers. Most of the Korath forces had been evacuated when their ships began failing, but hundreds of soldiers had been stranded when their transport vessels crashed. In Tokyo, former salaryman Hiroshi Tanaka was talking to an alien engineer about electromagnetic shielding technology. In London, bus driver Thomas Wright was discussing interstellar navigation with an alien pilot. In New York, police officer Maria Rodriguez was learning about energy weapons from an alien weapons specialist. The aliens who stayed were not prisoners exactly. They were more like students trying to understand what had happened to them.